Now, the amount of money taken by the London tech sector increased by 101% between 2010 and 2014. That is, according to a report published today by Tech City UK. It suggests the industry across Britain is growing 32% faster than the rest of the economy. The study was supported by the data group GrowthIntel, and Clark Hogan-Taylor is from the firm. Essentially, good news, certainly good news for the capital, because we know we've got a thriving tech sector.
It's brilliant news. I mean, yeah, there is no bad news in this report. The capital's tech sector is absolutely thriving, but I kind of think we sort of knew that already. I reckon most people in London intuitively know that it's a powerhouse of innovation. I think what's especially good about this report is that it proves that that's also true of loads of other areas of the UK, which in turn, I would argue, has got to be good for London as well, because London can only benefit from it being true that Leeds and Manchester and Sheffield are also following in its footsteps, if you like.
Yeah, some startling stats in this. I think something like 1.5 billion jobs now supported nationwide by the tech industry, be it directly or indirectly. That as you mentioned, is just got to be good for the economy.
It's great. I mean, it's 1.56 million people employed in digital tech, which is more than the NHS, for example. I was Googling to try and get some comparison, because 1.56 million doesn't really tell you much, but if you compare it to, I think the NHS is something like one of the world's biggest employers. There are more people in UK digital tech than that. So it's huge, and it's great to have numbers put against it, and there are some fantastic headlines. But what's also more exciting, but perhaps less obvious, is the way in which that data was gathered and how it was arrived at. Because up till now, governments have always found it pretty difficult to have really decent data on exactly what's going on in the economy, which sounds counterintuitive because they're constantly reporting on it, but actually it's really hard for them to say something like, oh, I don't know, there are this many games companies in Coventry, for example, and you would think that that was a thing they could just look up, but they can't. And so that's why they asked for our help and the help of loads of other companies. And so although kind of the official line is this is a report into the growth of UK digital tech, you could also, I reckon, argue that it's probably the world's most accurate picture of a segment of an economy that's ever existed. Yeah,
just give us an insight into how you came up with some of those findings. Lots of different firms involved in sending information.
Yeah, it's not just us, but the way that we did our bit was, it's kind of like the way that Google has organised the world's information, and the way that you tag people on Facebook is kind of, we've done something similar to that. So if you were a human doing this research, you would go to a company's website and go, right, well, they do online print stuff on mugs or whatever, and you can see because you read the text. If you automate that, you can do it at scale. So we just trained our algorithms to look at the text on millions and millions of websites and work out what those businesses do. And from that, you arrive at the fact that there are 58,000 digital tech companies in the UK.
Yeah, you could argue that this information, although it's the government that kind of wants it, it's useful for us to lobby the government to say, well, this is how important this industry is, and this is why it needs to be backed up by support and by legislation which will help us get those skilled workers.
Absolutely. I think, although it's hard to imagine when you work in tech, but I think if you step out of the tech bubble, you realise that there are some areas, possibly of government, possibly elsewhere, that still think that digital is people in shortage on unicycles talking about Twitter, and it's not. It really isn't. And if in case, for the avoidance of doubt, if we needed that proving, that's what TechNation 2016 does. Digital is not even just digital businesses. It's all pervasive. And one of the most interesting parts of the report is about traditional industries that are non-digital, but employing huge numbers of digital people. And so when we ran our algorithms, businesses like M&S popped up as being a digital business. And you think, well, that doesn't make sense, but it does, because a huge part of what they do is e-commerce, and they employ a huge number of people in digital roles. So I think that's certainly one of the biggest takeaways for me, is that digital is it's everywhere. And as you say, that will be useful when it comes to lobbying.
Yeah, indeed. Good to get your thoughts on this. Clark Hogan-Taylor from GrowthIntel. Thanks for joining us this lunchtime. We are going to take a short break. When we come back,